to the final panel of the day, brand-led NIL, very excited. Dean Brody, founder and CEO of REVEL Moments. We are in the business of athlete storytelling and helping brands get more value from their partnerships. But the reason I played that clip, obviously, we've got Dono here, who we're excited to have on the panel. But about a week after that game, which was the national championship, the media rights for that game were negotiated or renegotiated. And $8 billion for the CFP, the media rights. And so my question to all of you is how much of that money is going to Donovan and his teammates? Does anyone know the answer to that question? That is absolutely right. So I thought that was good context, because when we think about the future of college sports, I think it is going to be very important to figure out not how we trade, but how we share. And I think brand-led NIL is the first step in that direction of doing media sharing, where brands are very directly investing in student athletes and creating value. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. We've got a huge panel, so we're going to save the intros, but we're going to give everybody an opportunity to talk about why they're here. But with that, we'll actually run Melissa. We'll run the tape for probably my favorite brand-led NIL, and actually one of the first I saw. So first, Captain Johnson, thank you for being here. Perhaps maybe just start with your background, and then we'll get into the partnership that you've been working on for the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Captain Jerred Johnson. I've been in the National Guard for 22 years. I do have a background as a recruiter. Then I became an officer, and in the civilian side, I have a degree in marketing. So I always had a passion for this, and kind of right around COVID era, our leadership said, hey, we need a better way to brand on social media. So their solution was everybody, so everybody just brands themselves. And as marketers, we know that's a terrible idea because there's no continuity. So I knew that this NIL thing had just come up, and I said, we have these helicopters, we have these assets, we have people like Donovan Edwards that are in our target market. Why don't we have them tell our story? So, you want to just keep rolling, right?
Well, I'll just pause just quick. So one of the things that really struck me is Michigan Army National Guard was one of the first big brands in my mind. Obviously, we had seen car dealerships and local restaurants, but a big brand that's big locally but also nationally. So the question to maybe tee off is like, what caused you to lean in early, and then maybe roll into the campaign? And obviously, it's 2 years running. But
yeah. So again, like I said, I came up with the idea, and I think one of the people earlier said that the first guy through the door gets shot, and it's a very military term, and I was the first guy through the door, but I thought that it was a good idea, and I couldn't see anything negative in it, right? Partnering with student athletes that have strong beliefs and value systems like U of M does, and the athletes that I've met. So I ran into Jerred, and I ran into about 1 million no's, and we just sidestepped until, like I said, I just saw the value, and a couple of marketers have said that too, right? Just believe in what you're doing and pursue it. So that's what we did.
Talk about July 2022. I think there were 120 football players flying the helicopters, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this one's Jerred's fault. I wanted to bring 10 guys out, and I met with Jerred, and he said, hey, what if we bring the whole team? And I said, well, my leadership said we're going to go to jail for this anyways, we might as well go big. so, because that's what I got told when I first briefed this to the Army National Guard. Like, are you trying to go to prison? Like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I think it's a good idea. So we fought tooth and nail, and I didn't even tell Jerred until that day that we didn't have approval until about 2 hours before the helicopters were running, and we didn't have approval, and I'm pouring sweat, like, oh my God, everybody's happy, Donovan's there, JJ, all the guys, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be so embarrassing when I tell them, just kidding. But our tag showed up, our 2-star, and what happened is we had convinced him that this was the right thing to do for our brand, and he wouldn't tell us yes. Showed up and looked up and said, seems like a good day to fly. And I was like, oh, all the weight came off. But so we took the guys up. They flew in Chinooks, Blackhawks. I believe you flew in a Blackhawk, right? We took them over, we called it enemy territory. So we did a recon, so we flew over the little Spartan thing. I don't want to call it a stadium, but whatever. And then we took them all the way to Ann Arbor. They got to fly over the big house, did a little dip so they could see, you know, where they play from an aerial view, and brought them back. And they got to fly flight simulators, and really they got to see what we do, right? What soldiers do. And the cool part was they interacted with hundreds of soldiers that day that were their age. So it was just, you know, the synergy of the two, right? You could be a football player, or you could be a soldier, and the same group come from the same areas. So I think it was just a great story for our brand.
Fantastic. And obviously the burden of marketing is the ROI. Maybe talk about the results of the campaign, what the goals were, and what the results ended up being.
So, like you said, it's been a 2-year process. The beginning, again, federal government was like, get out of here. We ain't spending any money on this, right? So the state ponied up, and the state said, hey, we see value in this. So the first flight thing was a 90-day campaign we did, I believe. State paid for it, and we went back to National Guard Bureau, and I said, hey, you know, we got 6 enlistments. Our social media has grown exponentially. These guys are wearing National Guard branded stuff to events that we're not even asking them to. Like, they like our stuff, you know, they're sharing it. They had a blast. So National Guard Bureau said, hey, you know, we'll give you a chunk of money and see what you can do with it. So this last year we've continued that. Donovan's been part of those things too. We've done leadership symposiums where we bring food in for deployed soldiers. We've been part of the toy drive with Blake Corum. Just, again, the synergy of the brand, right? We're a community, these kids are in the community. And then, I believe 2 weeks ago, right, I got my team sitting here. Stand up real quick. Starting young and starting Durst. Great helpers on this, but so now, as of last week, I believe, the entire 54 states and territories are authorized to do this now, so with federal funding. So yeah, I mean, pretty huge from where we started to where we're at now.
Very, very innovative. And I want to get Don, I want to get your perspective. And so, Don, who won that matchup? Rocket, you know, you or JJ?
I think it's clear to see that I won. I was nervous watching it because I didn't know if I was going to win it.
But Donovan, I know you were there with 120 of your teammates that day. But maybe talk about that day and talk about the partnership that you and your teammates had with Captain Johnson.
I think that it was an amazing experience for us. For one, it gave us a good being able to have a team bonding. It also gave us the opportunity to see, you know, a different perspective of, you know, what the National Guard does and, you know, how they serve our country, how they serve the state. They gave us an amazing opportunity to be able to ride in helicopters, but, you know, overall, it just gave us, you know, like a different viewpoint. You know, like we asked the, you know, the soldiers multiple questions, you know, and they gave us real answers. Like how he said, how Captain Johnson said, excuse me, how, you know, we got to fly in the simulated helicopters, which is all very fun for us. You know, it gave us a different perspective of football, and at the same time, it allowed us to be able to connect to the National Guard as well. Excuse me. It showed us that we have very similar things in common when it comes to our football team and to the National Guard. You know, it's a culture that is built. You know, it is a brotherhood, a bond, you know, that is there. So it gave us a good amount of respect and admiration for the National Guard, and, you know, we will forever be grateful for, you know, Captain Johnson and his whole team has done for us, because not only are they giving us great experiences, you know, like off the field and showing us what they've done, but at the same time, like they felt Blake and sponsored him with his toy drive, and, you know, they're very beneficial for us, always be in our back pocket and our corner for us.
So we're going to move to the next partnership. So I want to talk about Delta Dental. Michigan, probably got a lot of Delta Dental members in the house today. But good friend Margaret, her and I had a conversation probably about a year ago about kind of traditional spend for corporations in sports, whether it's, you know, signage, suites, what have you. And Margaret challenged myself and my company REVEL to think differently and you know, activate a key customer. So I'm going to give Margaret the honors to kind of tee up what we did. We've got a couple clips. So Margaret.
Yeah, thanks, Dean, and thanks for being an innovator. Because Delta Dental is a pretty conservative dental benefits company. We talk about smiles, we talk about things that are warm fuzzy mostly, and we don't push the envelope too much. And so over the 6 years that I've been there, we've had a pretty high spend in stadiums all over our 3 states, Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. And every year I just wring my hands because I don't believe the ROI in seats and suites and signage is really where it's at. When it comes to building relationships with our clients, it's the same old, same old. And we want to have something memorable, something special that we can bring to our clients, our brokers and partners that nobody else can, right? And so that was really the challenge. Dean, help us take it to the next level. And we happen to have a partner. I have pledged not to name them, but we happen to have a partner that was particularly in love with U of M. Bled. Green, is it green? Oh no, that's my color. Blue and gold. Sorry, Donovan. Oh, it's that maize color. I'll get it right. But we happen to have a partner that was really solid U of M fan. And we thought, oh gosh, there's 100 colleagues there that we could really do something special. And Blake was on fire, and so that was the perfect personality to partner with. And Blake Corum is such a community guy, and we have prided ourselves on our community work being a force for good, and he was a force in so many ways for good. So it was a great partnership.
Yeah, so we're going to tee up the clip. So the challenge is, how do you create a meaningful experience for upwards of 100 clients and their kids? You know, a lot of corporate entertainment doesn't include the family. And so what we were able to do in partnership with Valiant and Blake and Delta Dental is put together a live documentary experience to allow 100 of Delta Dental's key customers to get to know this incredible human being. So you're going to see 2 clips. You're actually not going to hear from Blake. You're going to hear from his father, James, talking about his proudest moment with his son. Didn't have anything to do with what he performed on the field. And then Leslie, you can just run the second clip, because the money that Delta Dental provided Blake for this experience, much of that went back into the community in the form of a turkey drive. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of NIL that we really don't hear a lot about. But maybe Margaret, just to close out your segment, maybe just talk about your clients or your customers and what their reaction was.
Well, of course, they're still talking about it, right? And it was a bonding experience. It's that kind of thing that from a client to client, we could say, we did this together and nobody else has a role in that. And I think they are very proud of what we were able to do together in that space. But I also want to underscore, as a company, we can't and we don't endorse. And so when we look at the NIL space, it's like we're never going to put our name on an athlete. Well, I've done it a couple times and get in really big trouble. So you and I may need to talk about who gets fired first. But we can support them. And the way that we engaged in the community was something that mattered to Blake. I think was value add for him, and it certainly was value add for us. And I think NIL is really opening that door. So.
Fantastic. So next we're going to move on to Wolverine. We're joined by, I think, recently promoted Chief Marketing Officer. So congratulations, Scott. We met several months ago through some of the work you were starting with the University of Michigan, but I think maybe the tee up as you get into your partnership is, I think you have figured out a very effective way to work with both the university and student athletes. And based on my opening comments, I do think that's the future. I know you and I talked about that. So maybe some background on the partnership. I know we've got a video, but maybe some context first.
Sure. So many of you may or may not know Wolverine Boots. It's the oldest work boot company in the country, out of Rockford, Michigan, founded right here in Michigan 140 years ago. But if you're not a core tradesman or a core trades worker, you may not have heard or think about work boots as much as we do. And so the challenge for our brand, honestly, is household penetration and awareness. There's 40 million core trades workers in the country. There's hundreds of millions of do-it-yourselfers, all opportunity to sell some work boots. And so that's part one, is right. We're a for-profit business. We're in business to sell work boots. But also in our country, there's a massive issue with kids going into the core trades. So over the next 10 years, about 8 million jobs will go unfilled just because we've all been so conditioned that we need to go to either a four-year university or a community college, and that's not just necessarily the case for every kid. And so it's created an enormous trades skilled labor gap. And so for us, it's constantly about trying to bring awareness to that concept and that idea. And we spend a lot of our dollars supporting scholarships that put kids into trade school that are interested in going to trade school. To do that, we have to sell more boots. So we started off on the premise that hard work takes on many faces. And there's no difference in the mentality that you see from the University of Michigan football team, particularly starting with Coach Harbaugh at the time. He talked about being a blue-collar team. We started to meet some of the players. Our experience started meeting Chase Winovich, who had a great background, a great story at University of Michigan. Then I met Jerred, then Blake, and then Dono, and the rest of the guys. And for us, it was really about driving some awareness around the concept of hard work takes on many faces. And if you're around these guys for any amount of time, you realize that the hard work that they're doing is very blue collar in its ethic. It's no different than the hard work that we see in core trades people across the country. And we wanted to create that, build that bridge and create that program. And it was important to us to do a couple of things. It was important to us, one, to have our name out there associated with a group of people and an organization in the Michigan football team that we felt great about. Certainly, like you did, Jerred, had a lot of challenges at first getting the program going. There's a lot of concern about, can you take a Wolverine and a heritage brand and associate it with young college kids? And I didn't look at it that way. Once I met Jerred, once I met Chase, once I was around the program a little bit, and then met Dono and Blake, I knew that we were in good hands, because there is risk associated with a brand partnering with athletes. We see it all the time, but I just didn't feel that risk at all, and felt very comfortable standing in front of our executive team saying, I absolutely pledge that this will be a great program for us. And once we were through that, we were off to the races. And the big thing for us was doing the right thing for the brand, but also doing the right thing for the student athletes. Right? There's a lot of work that they put in. There's a lot of dollars that surround particularly college football, and not a lot of dollars going back to the players. And we wanted to make sure, as I learned more from Jerred, we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing by the players, which I know is how everybody up here feels. And that's part of it. Like, I had seen certainly the car dealerships partnering with some of the athletes, and I just felt like, gosh, we can do better than this, and we can amp this up a little bit, and we certainly have. And in terms of from an ROI perspective, if we're promoting a boot on social media, we get 3,000 views, right? That's good for us. If we have a video of Donovan talking about, Donovan in particular last year, talking about Wolverine, the partnership with Wolverine, we get upwards of 20,000 views and interactions, right? So it changes the game for us as a brand, and it's in a great way, because if you know anything about Donovan, you know he can't be outworked, and that's what Wolverine is about, right? Period. End of story. We talk about it all the time. We saw the other partners jumping on and felt like, boy, we have synergies with the other partners as well. So for us, it was a great fit. It's not like Ohio State was beating down our door when your name's Wolverine. You go, and we were fine with that, right? Because we felt in particular this Michigan program, these Michigan players specifically, represented something different than what we were seeing across the college landscape. And so for us, that was the starting point. From there, and what I think is the future of NIL is it can't be just a marketing program. If you are in a big brand today and you're not thinking about NIL, call me. I'll take you through all the ROI points, because it is a great way to do the right thing by student athletes and do the right thing by your brand. We partnered with the University of Michigan because it is a national program. We have their players from the majority of the states across the country. So for instance, Blake Corum's from Virginia. We wanted to have an account-specific program going in Virginia. Everybody knows who Blake Corum is in Virginia, right? So opportunity for us. But around the country, and you're just hard-pressed to find better young men and better young women than what we're running into. And so I think that's one part of it. I think the other part of it, though, is this opportunity to sell product. to continue to keep it going. So we launched recently with Jerred and Valiant a retail website experience. It's Michigan branded Wolverine gear and Wolverine boots. A portion of the proceeds go back to the collective for the student athletes. And that's a great way for us to continue to build our brand outside of the core trades. Right? We need household penetration. Right? We need people making the choice to buy a pair of Wolverine boots when they go into Meijer, or they go into Walmart, or they go into any Tractor Supply, any of those places. And this has really helped us create a message that resonates beyond just the core trades.
So Donald, check out that boot. Yeah, maybe just talk a little bit about the work you've been doing with Wolverine. I think you maybe spoke at a company meeting, but would love for
You
to
did,
get your
he did
perspective.
awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry once again. Wolverine Boots has been amazing to work with. You know, everything that Scott was talking about is completely true. The best interest is in the players and as well as in their brand as well. And believe me that with us, you know, like we won't do anything that, you know, that does not resonate to Michigan football, right? And what the Wolverine Boost has done is completely aligned with the Michigan football program, right? We're blue collar people, you know. We're gonna tuck our shirts in. We're gonna get dirty by any means necessary. We're gonna get the job done, and that's exactly what they have done. And you know, it continues to stand out. We're going to continue to work with them in 20 years from now because of what they have done for us for the past couple of years, being able to work with them. So it's been a true honor, and you know, great people to work with, fantastic boots to wear. I wear them in the wintertime, and you know, even if it's not even in the wintertime, you know, like you could, like if you have hard work to do, some labor to do, that's what it's all about. We're blue. This is a blue collar brand. This is a blue collar program, and you know, it's just a blessing to be able to partner with Wolverine Boots.
Thank you, Donald. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and I think it's important because all of us up here are trying to drive a movement. How does this become the norm? How do we get more brands kind of leaning into this kind of NIL? So I'm going to go on record. Your MC this afternoon, a good friend of mine said, right, Jerred Wangler is the driving force behind Michigan NIL. He's got an amazing team. I know there's lots of great team members. Nolan, I see you there. A lot of folks in the room. But Jerred, I wanted your perspective on why this kind of NIL is so important. You're in the middle of collectives, transfer portals, all the people call it Wild Wild West. Why is this kind of NIL so important to college sports?
Well, I think it's really important to be able to go and point towards these case studies for the institutions themselves, right? Because when you look at college athletics, and it's under enormous change, and just 5 years ago, I was leaving college, right? And the thought process behind the compensation for college athletes was far distant thought in the back of everybody's minds. And I can look back to my junior year in college. I co-founded Valiant. At the time, we were just a Michigan licensed t-shirt company. Like, we just had a very small scope on what we were able to do at the institution. And I actually got my scholarship threatened to be revoked because I went and promoted my brand on my social media. And I thought it was just one of those moments that was so eye-opening for me, because in that same class project that I was working in, I had a theater student that was on academic scholarship. There was there was 3 other academic scholarships, among students in that group, and I was the only athlete that was on an academic scholarship. And I was threatened to have that revoked just because I was promoting something on my social media while everyone else had the economic right to do so. So it was that moment that I felt like college athletes, I understood just the marginalization that we were kind of being put through. And with that, I started working in sports marketing after I graduated college in 2019. And it was just through that experience I saw what was to come with this Alston versus NCAA case, where it was heading into the courts. Pretty just evident landing spot for college athletes to be able to kind of share in the pie that is this multi-billion-dollar industry. And it's been 3 years of building the infrastructure behind a business that could go out and source out these brand opportunities, but also find a way to really pull the different revenue levers that the institutions have pulled for years. Putting on events with student athletes, connecting them with the alumni base, driving donations to a collective to help keep the team competitive in the market. So really through partnerships with the National Guard and Wolverine Boots, we're able to actually create these case studies for the institution to have them a little bit more comfortable and have the appetite to lean in a little bit more. Being at the University of Michigan, which is a very conservative university relative to its counterparts across the country, it's really taken these types of partnerships to be able to point to and say, hey, this is actually how you do it. And if you have a collective which is aggregating funds from boosters all across the country, you're also working with the student athletes and trying to create some sort of mechanism, not just to have a pay-for-play or transactional relationship with the student athletes, but finding brands that you can actually partner them with and supplement those marketing budgets to create competitive earning opportunities with some of our counterparts across the country. It's been a game changer, and it's really helped kind of grease the wheels in having the university kind of open up that economic opportunity for the student athletes.
Fantastic, thanks, Jerred. And to bring us home, I want to tee up. He's become a great friend and great thought partner. But Brand Innovators has really kind of taken the cause of how to move brand-led NIL across the country. And so with that, I want to tee up Trey Holder to talk about the business he's building within Brand Innovators, BI College Sports, and how we're going to make more of these stories the norm going forward.
Well, thanks a lot, Dean. I first off appreciate being on this panel. I mean, one of the things I love about this panel is the creativity of it. Every single one of these stories is very different of how they're activating with brands, and I think that's really activating with the athletes. So I think that's really important to understand that there's different ways to work with athletes. It's not just a zero-sum scenario or a black and white scenario. There's a lot of different ways to be able to do that. And also, everybody up here is a pioneer, really. I mean, really what you've been doing with REVEL and Valiant and all the, risking getting shot in the head, being first, I mean, that's a tough deal, to break that door down, right? So, really excited, and when we had the idea to create the Brand Innovators College Sports and create this kind of platform and forum, this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to be able to highlight to all the brands in the audience how they can work with these athletes. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there around how much these athletes might be making for certain things. I remember talking to a CMO of a retailer, and he wanted to do something with some Texas Tech athletes, and all these entities got involved, and they were going to charge him several $1 million to work with these college athletes, and we're like, that's ridiculous. And so we brought in actually Playbooked, and they were able to get him the same deal for less than 6 figures. But those athletes wouldn't even have that opportunity if we didn't debunk that for them. So that's what we're trying to do is help facilitate relationships between brands and collectives, brands and athletes, brands and universities, and help brands navigate this space. We have been dipping our foot into sports for the last several years now, doing events around Super Bowl and F1. We just did our first ever event solely focused on college at the Final Four. I think we went to the wrong Final Four. We went to the one in Phoenix. I think the action was in Cleveland. But it was still an amazing event. We're going to be doing some events coming up around football, probably around the Texas-Michigan game. So I'm a Longhorn, so I'm excited to come up here and go to the big house and challenge these guys. But we'll be doing some events around different football games and national championship games, and continuing to provide a platform for brands to be able to tell these stories and for athletes to tell their stories as well.
Thank you, Trey. So I know we're coming up on time, but we're definitely doing Q&A, so we're going to go a little bit late. So hopefully we have some good questions. All the way in the back.
Hi, I work on the brand side of marketing, and I'm curious, when this is kind of what for you here, how difficult is it for you, working with Fortune 500 brands, to get Fortune 500 brands to understand the value of the
Yeah, that's a great question. For those who couldn't hear, how are we working to get Fortune 500 brands comfortable with the idea of advertising in college athletics or directly with the athlete? Because traditionally, if you were trying to reach the consumer in college athletics, you were working on the property side. And traditionally, through a multimedia rights holder like a Learfield, Playfly, it's the conservative way to go. These are large institutions with rock solid brands behind them, and you're talking about taking some of that spend and reallocating it to unproven 18 to 21-year-olds to high-risk type of situation. So it's been a work in progress over the last 3 years. And really where we found our immediate success, we're targeting the brands that are already spending on the property and then just trying to find a tiny piece of that budget to then go and partner with, whether it's one student athlete or a group of student athletes. So, fast forward to 2024, you're turning on the TV, watching March Madness, and you're seeing blue chip brands that traditionally only advertise on the property side, now activating with the student athlete as a part of that marketing strategy. So I think just pointing to those case studies and watching them compound on one another will continue to grow it. But like the reality is, it is inherently more risky than partnering with professional athletes, right? They're younger, it's more of a nebulous type of space. NIL has become such a big buzzword, and it's hard to separate what it was really meant for versus what it's become across the country in certain pay-for-play type of scenarios. But really, when you can find a property that's doing it the right way, finding a brand, and then working with a proven student athlete to go and elevate that campaign, that's where you can really point to in terms of success.
Can I jump in on that answer too, just real quick? I would just say, test and learn, right? You don't have to bite off a big chunk first, but if you're interested in it and you find the right athlete for you and you get a chance to meet that athlete, I mean, that's what's been so interesting to me is that as we've met the athletes and we have the synergies. Donovan will be the face of our campaign in the coming year. And we had to build our way there over a period of 2-3 years, but to get an organization more comfortable with it. But the metrics play out. And not only the metrics play out, Dean mentioned it, Donovan did speak to our organization, as did Coach Moore and Zach Zinner. And that is an organization rallier. Let me tell you, I can't walk through the halls still without hearing something about Donovan or Zach or Coach Moore. They think that we talk, they think that I have the hotline to Donovan during the season. Hey, tell Donovan, great game. I'll call him in 5. Yeah, I got it. But just, a test and learn approach really can be powerful, especially when you figure out who the athlete or athletes that you're interested in are.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that also is, I mentioned it a little bit, but organizations like REVEL and Valiant and Playbooks can really help these brands navigate and interact with these athletes, not just at one university, but if you want to do a national campaign. So working with the right organizations to help facilitate that is very important.
Can I just add that we did what we did behind closed doors in a very small and controlled setting so that we could test without danger. And I think there's a lot of value in doing it that way too.
We're going to go one more question. Nadine?
As part of my job, I have the privilege of talking to you, Scott, and Captain Johnson often. But a question I've never asked you, and maybe I should have asked you, but this just brought light to the fact. How do you, once you decide that you're going to take up space in the NIL world, how do you decide what athletes, and in both of your cases, usually you're working with a group of athletes off of maybe a 140-man roster. How do you choose what athletes you want to work with? What are your qualifications, or what's your criteria?
Well, for us, and I'll turn it over to Captain Johnson, but for us, it was a lot of work with Jerred and Nolan and team around the background of the guys and what kind of character they have, and then what kind of work ethic they have. Because as much as we certainly do want to sell boots, it can't be something that just doesn't feel right. And again, I challenge you, watch Donovan and find somebody that works harder, right? That is easy for us. That's a layup all day because that's what we're about, and that's what the brand DNA is. And every one of the team members that we had on the roster last year, same sort of thing. They just could not be outworked. Leaders in their own right, and their character was true from top to bottom.
Yeah, I'll say our first experience really was we actually told the guys that they were going to fly on the helicopters. We came to practice about 5:30 in the morning, right? We were in uniform. They were shuffling in their sandals, and just like my kids, fog in their eyes and stuff. But then we watched them practice, right? And we saw the culture. Coach Jerred was there at the time. Just like he said, hardworking kids, right? Met the kids, and imparted our values on them. Like, we have to share what our values are and understand that that's what we hold you to when you work with us. And they understood. A lot of them signed a contract that they would uphold the same values that we have in the Army. And then just this team, this organization, and again, it's not just a football organization. We work with track. women's track, we work with women's basketball, we work with wrestling, and it's a cultural thing that's happening at this university, and we have no problem partnering with it. We actually have billboards up for the first time in 7 years, and I went to the National Guard Bureau and said, I'm going to put JJ and Blake up there, and they're like, oh God, what if they get a DUI? What? I said, what if the soldier you put up there gets a DUI? Are we just not going to brand, or are we going to do this? And they hemmed and hawed for a couple weeks, and I actually sent them some stuff. These guys both run nonprofits, and they have a code of conduct that they hold themselves to, and I sent that to the National Guard, and I got a response in like 30 minutes, and they said, put them up. So, you know, it's like he said, you look these guys in their eyes, and you can tell that they have the same values as you, and again, you take a risk, right? Anybody can make a mistake, but you got to take a risk, so first guy through the door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank the brand leaders for being early adopters, for being trailblazers. You know, I know we've got a lot of folks in the room, and I think maybe Patrick, I'll let you close this down, but I will put in one plug because I know that Brandon Gutman, co-CEO and founder, has talked about it. We do want to get this community together more often. So if you had a good time today, please raise your hand. You will definitely see emails from Andrew and others. I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick to bring us home in that amazing jean jacket. So.
All right. I think we all want to get back together for the Michigan-Texas game. And praise God that we see this guy bust 2 for 80 on Texas. Let's go. So once again, let's give a round of applause for our panelists.